Good morning. Let me double click my camera. Choo, 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 boom. Welcome in, everyone, live on September 5th, 2023. Happy to be here, folks. I'm joined by Mr. Jackery Kellogg. Can I call you Jackery?
Sounds good.
All right. Mr. iPhone himself. We just got done with a very jam-packed week. We were all over the East Coast. We were in Boston for the boot camp. Let me know in the chat if you guys were a part of that, if you showed up to the boot camp, if you learned anything. And then we went to Maine. We went to New Hampshire. Got to see where Jack spends his time. It was a lot of fun. And it's really nice over there. I'm a big fan of Maine, so I really liked that vibe out there. You know, you got your lobster rolls, your clam chowder. That's really just my speed.
Good stuff.
But all right, how'd you're on quite the tear right now, Mr. Kellogg. You're really consistent. We got to live trade with each other last week with Gratani, saying Lucci. It was a lot of fun. Roland, what's been your keys to success right now?
Key to success has been sticking to, I think it's really three things. One thing that a lot of people that I didn't really preach about at the conference that I kind of been thinking about is keeping one bias throughout the entire day. And I haven't allowed myself to change my bias based on what I think in the pre-market. So, yeah, it's cool, like if you're able to flip bias during a trade, but I feel like more times than not, you end up chewing yourself out and you end up taking more losses than you anticipated, where if you just end up sticking with one bias and taking a loss and then leaving it alone for the rest of the day. So keeping one bias, and then what I preached at the conference, good entries, only entering positions when they come into key areas and seeing how they react around those areas, and also sticking to the patterns, really, which is something that Dom preaches a lot too. Is some people talk about random stuff in the chat room, and Dom always says, "What's the pattern?" Right? And that's something that I like to ask myself before I take the trade. Like, what's the pattern? Is it overextended gap up, overextended gap down? Is it a breakout? Is it a gapping crap? Or is it, frankly, just a random trade?
Yeah, that's all really good advice. We had some patterns working so far this week. Chat's talking about NVOS. We can maybe get to that in a minute, but let's start off with some gapilators. I know Jack's been trading a lot of these gappers, either short biased or not really long biased, but more short biased. We did have Roland talking a little bit about the long bias perspective on them. So we have him for today while Huddy is out. So let's get into it and see what he's thinking. Let's head on over to Benzanga. All right, first one on my list is MARXR a real stock, or is that just a no? All right, Verb. First one we got here. Let's dive into the dilution tracker. We've got a 4 million float, 4.5 million shares outstanding in the software application business. Quite high potential dilution. I have some, what do we got here? Active ATM. Where are you? There we go. So some potential dilution littered in there. News, do we have news? They launch groundbreaking TikTok integration. Verb's an oldie, is it not? One we've seen before?
Yep, I remember Verb.
So let's take a look at the chart. We have a giant gap up in run day on earlier this year in January that ended up being a giant gap up, run, and then giant gap down. And then most recently we have a big volume day from May where kind of had a little push out of the gates and then closed near the lows. Kind of far off its highs already this morning. What are we looking at here, Kellogg? Spiking to the highs for a short. If not, it probably fades off. It's more towards the low end of the range.
Yeah, I think the gappers today especially feel nothing's really like super extended percentage wise. Like we see a lot of 30, 40, 20, 50% gap ups. Like Verb right now is the biggest gap up of 50%. And all these charts are just like really, really gross. Like, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but AULT, recent reverse split, like big ATM, top left to bottom right, like Dom likes to say. Same thing with Verb, same thing, GDC, same idea, kind of like a big gapping crap type chart. So all these charts are honestly just garbage. But yeah,
So
and
on days like
HTSC.
this, so on Good Morning Nasdaq, we go through the list. We really try to take a temperature of the market, and I think Kellogg does the best job of this in the room. And so it being the first day following a long weekend, when you're taking the temperature of these gappers, you pretty much your biggest one is in the 40s, and then you have a ton of 20 and 30 percenters. What does that kind of give you insight into the week going forward?
I mean, the main thing that I'm taking away right now is longs aren't really chasing this type of price action right now. Like the price action looks like nothing's really like we've seen a few pops and then it just like kind of comes right back in. So it tells me that there's not a lot of buyers in the pre-market. And also another thing that I've considered too this week is um last week like the short opportunities were great, VFS, ICCT, and the week before there were some good short opportunities too. So it seems like we really haven't had like a big long trade since TTOO. So it kind of tells me that maybe, just maybe, that really where the focus should be this week is on stuff like NVOS, stuff like CGC, stuff like eBet, which are some cheapies that are trading a lot of volume, that potentially could provide some breakouts. So that's kind of like what I'm reading into the market so far this morning.
Okay, and let's take a look at some of these. You have NVOS. Chat was talking about that one. Couple really big levels looking back on like let's go back to like a 200-day chart. This 21 to 28 area, even up towards 30, is pretty much riddled with tops. A lot of resistance here. You have a lot of multi-month, pretty much the entire year this year, where this stock has struggled to break through. Thought it was dead last week as it tried to break over the multi-leveled resistance at 25 in the 23 area. Fades off, which is what you'll see sometimes is these stocks, they don't quite have the juice to break through the resistance when they're close to the highs. They fade off. You get all those sellers out. You reward any shorts, and then you get a gap up right into that resistance. And MDOS was quite strong on Friday, probably due to the fact that there really wasn't any external supply, like a lot of extra sellers to kind of try to hold on to that gap. It did pull back into the 17s, bounced back, closed in the 20s, and this morning had a 4 a.m. move towards 28 cents. But so far, just a nice little 10% gap up so far. Really interested to see how this one plays out. It's in the right theme, right? Over the last few weeks, Jack mentioned TTOO, which was a really nice low price runner that went from like 10 cents up towards 70 cents at the end of its run. NVOS did catch a little bit of a bid following that run. He also mentioned EBET, low priced, cheapy stock, the ones that have been getting the attention that maybe on the days where the gappers aren't really all that interesting, people are interested in buying and chasing these low price stocks. So definitely something to keep an eye on as we go into the week. You mentioned VFS there. Really nice play at the boot camp. A lot of people, so this last week was this Monday and Tuesday, had a lot of people get chopped up on that last big gap up green day. And then a lot of people I saw nail that first red day. The stock has been pretty much super heavy following that first red day. It's been really unable to bounce. Even if it does bounce $1.50, there is immediately selling pressure. So I do have a watch list over on the Clover chat room. If you want to check that out, we do have 7-day trial if you want to get in there. And I do have VFS on there for potential reversal or first green day. But very cautious with how heavy this one's been for like 3 or 4 days now. But this is the type of range that I'm looking for. On days where the gappers aren't all that interesting, I like to keep my focus on former runners, stocks that have been hot, that people have been paying attention to. And VFS is definitely one of them. ICCT, also runner from last week. Giant move from the $2 area, hit 42 after hours on Monday or Tuesday. And I know a lot of the Clovers made a lot of money shorting that on that big gap up day into the $20 area. We'll see how that one shakes out today. Let's take another look at the scan, see if there's anything popping up here. You brought up AULT, GDC, HSDT. Higher priced stock here. Let's take a look and see what the situation is. $0.55 million float, and says it's 0.57 million, so 570,000 million shares outstanding. That's real.
No,
That's
thank you.
very small. You say no thank you?
Yeah.
I got 6 months of cash, a lot of potential dilution. Really only could get the outstanding share count or the float up into the 1 millions, so not insanely dilutive. What's the news here? Compliant with all applicable NASDAQ listing criteria. So they did a reverse split 19 days ago, or they announced one. Let's see. One for 50, beginning August 17th. Okay, so they did it back here. Kind of retraced a bit, and now so the news today is really just that they were probably compliant with the dollar minimum bid requirement, probably with their valuation or whatever. Super tiny float. Already just on like 1.5 million shares today. Up 60%, has touched almost $15 today. So definitely want to keep an eye on. You hear Jack said no thank you. Is it because of the float and just not really necessary to be trading something less than 1 million shares outstanding?
Yeah, it just doesn't like it's already kind of faded off the pre-market. It started gapping up in after hours Friday actually. But yeah, it doesn't, I just don't like it for some reason. Also, if you look at the daily, it's just kind of like a sideways daily chart for the most part. So it's not, they haven't really been diluting too much compared to these other stocks. They look way more, like they look a lot more gross to me.
Yeah.
So if there was one to just kind of squeeze or at least have a morning push, it's probably this HDST one. But it's too hard to like kind of for me to think about how it would trade. But I just know that it's probably not a short sell.
Yeah, it's probably going to be super thin. We'll see the actual type of volume that comes in. It's really hard to gauge what these type of stocks are going to do out of the gate when all you have to work off of is 800,000 shares in after hours and 1.7 million this morning. But you can already see, due to its low float, how much it can move on that little volume. 10 to 15 is a 50% move. Not to mention the gap from the $7 or $8 area. So just kind of a reminder to be cautious. You always hear Nate say, know what you own. It's hard to get a full grasp of the story. The only reason this is up is because it's so crappy that they had to do a reverse split to maintain the requirement to be on be a NASDAQ, which really isn't earth-shattering news. It's not like they did anything with the product or made a bunch of money. So it's just really understanding that type of situation, and just in general, longing or shorting, 500,000 share floats is very difficult. It's very easy to get chopped up in both directions. Key levels aren't going to be as key because of the low volume moving the stock. And as you kind of go throughout your career, I know a lot of people, when you're in your beginners, these are the flashy stocks, the ones that can move multiple dollars a share really quickly. But as you kind of grow and you find what makes you the trader that you are, it usually ends up being avoiding stuff like this, just because more often than not, a disaster is more likely to take place than a giant trade, because it's really hard to get the conviction to actually take size required to make enough money on these things. There was a question in chat. We'll kind of get to that and then probably wrap her up today. Pretty slow gapper so far. We got 90 of you watching. Would prefer if another 15 to 20 of you hit the like button just to show your support for the channel. Happy to be back after a little week-long break. Someone asked an interesting question. What are some good podcasts I can listen to while at work? Me and Jack were all about that motivational, inspirational life back when we were just getting started. There wasn't a drive or a moment of rest where we weren't listening to something, whether it be on YouTube or a podcast or reading a book. So what do you got? Some suggestions, Kellogg? What did you used to listen to when you got an hour-long drive?
Strictly for trading stuff, I think that it'd be good for a lot of you to listen to a lot of the trading podcasts from successful traders, just to kind of see their journey. So I used to do a lot of chat with traders when I would have a long drive. And nowadays, though, you have MICs doing a podcast with different various traders. You have, of course, the Clover trading YouTube videos where a lot of them are like educational stuff, but we do have a couple interviews on there that you can check out. And another one is, I don't even know. I check out Chat with Traders, the old video,
Yeah,
the old ones.
I was gonna say I haven't listened to them in a while, but I know that the older ones, when you can kind of listen to like Nate or Gratani, back in the day, like when they were like stone cold killers, like 4 or 5 years ago. Those are really good. And the cool thing about Chat with Traders, you get to hear from a bunch of different retail traders that you've never heard of, because that's like their one moment in the limelight, and they don't have services, and you don't really hear from them on Twitter. I think Ozark Trades was one that was really, really interesting that I never really knew existed. Non-trading stuff that I think is really good just to build a foundation for your brain to become an entrepreneur and to work for yourself and understand the ups and downs of the journey. Impact Theory with Tom Belau. He's got insane CEOs and entrepreneurs from all different industries. They really just help form and formulate the way you think, how to become a lot stronger, emotionally invincible, which I think is really, really important. Valuetainment has a lot of good stuff from Patrick Bet-David from the past, 5-10 years ago, a lot of really good videos. But anything interview style, understanding how a trader got from where they started to where they are is really important, because there's so many different come up stories from how long it took them. Some traders took them 5 or 7 years and now they're one of the best. Others figured it out in the first year, and were slow and steady. And it doesn't matter if they're long bias, short bias, if they're a scalper, if they're a swing trader. Listening to the way they think and the way they structure their trading, and how they've built their blueprint, I think is really, really important. And you might be able to just take something away from it that you can add to your trading. So let's see here. Clover Trading Management says they are better traders now than then. They're stone cold now. Yeah, they are. But they were like stone cold killers back then. Now they got kids, and more Gratani take some time off trading. A lot of people in the chat today. Twist had Kyle and Kellogg. Yeah, if we could just get 4 more likes, get up to 50, that'd be fantastic. We also hit triple digits today, over 100 viewers. That's a nice little welcome back after a week off. So thank you all for being here.
Us, huh?
Yeah, we're back in the game, ready to be back. Ready to go hard in the Clover room. We got a bunch of video lessons I want to get out this week. We got some webinars this week as well. Going to get back into the swing of it. So great time. If you haven't, sign up for Clover Trading. Get into 3-leaf or 4-leaf. We have a 7-day trial. I think it's $1 a day. You can't put $7 towards your education. What are you willing to do? We try to do as much free stuff as we can, but really the bulk of the education is in the room, getting to listen to Mr. Kellogg's, his walks in the middle of the day when things get hot. He's absolutely killing it right now. So it's a great time to be in there, because he's giving away all his information, everything he's trading. And we're probably going to head over there right now. So thank you guys for being here. Tomorrow morning, we'll be back at 8:45 a.m. on the Dizot. Probably not on the Dizot, you know us. But Maybe Jack will be back. Maybe Heidi will be here. Who knows? But I know I'll be here. But we're going to head over to the Clover room right now, go through a watch list, and get ready for the trading day. So stay safe out there. And we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
See you in the Clover room.